Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Business Innovators Radio. I am your host, Ralph Brogdon, and I'm here today with Joy Passey. She is the Rebel Business Coach and founder of Joy Prosperity Coaching in New York City. She is an NYU certified organizational and executive coach and an Institute of Social and Emotional Intelligence certified coach. I think we probably could use quite a bit of that help in this day and time. So it's wonderful to have you. Now, Joy uses theater techniques to help entrepreneurs who are unclear, stuck, or overwhelmed about how to grow their business in the most cost-effective way. So, Joy, it's really great to have you on Business Innovators Radio today.
It's great being here. Thanks so much.
So you've got lots of credentials and some very interesting things that you bring to the table, but tell us a little bit more about who you are and what you do on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, so I'm originally from Seattle, Washington, and that was before Seattle became really cool. It became cool with like the grunge scene, and then now it's like Amazon, and of course Microsoft was there, but it was, it exploded after I left. But I've been living in New York City in Manhattan for 27 years. I can't believe it. But my whole background is dance and theater, so I've done a lot of like stage managing and producing, and I had my own theater company. So I've always been a go-getter and somebody, even when I was a kid, I used to be the kid who knocks on doors and like, can I wash your car? Or I used to pick dandelions, so I was always very entrepreneur and just thought, well, I want to make some money and how can I do it? And just started connecting with the closest people that were around me. But so I moved to New York City because I dropped out of college, wanted to start a life, started a theater company. And with that and all art background, I also had jobs that paid the rent. So the good thing is that I have worked in a variety of different industries and numerous different types of jobs. And plus, like I said, I'm a constant learner. And so I'm always like learning new things and I'm always exploring different groups and organizations. So what used to be seen as a negative, and this is why I always tell people too, like what used to be seen as a negative, because people used to say, like the corporate people, like you're all over the place, you're so scattered. But now it's like my greatest asset. They have had studies done where people with the wider networking nets that go in different groups and organizations and are involved in their communities in different ways are actually the more successful because you just know more people. You have more resources. So I always tell people, you just need to get out and just go into just different meetups just to meet people and see what they're saying and what they're thinking. And you just never know who you're going to meet.
Yeah, sure.
So that's actually been that's like my biggest plus. And so I have I'm in the fashion, done stuff in the fashion industry. I've worked behind the scenes in the Macy's parade, Thanksgiving parade. I've worked behind the scenes in Fashion Week. And then, of course, with like theater. And so I've kind of been doing a lot of stuff. But also with I work with tech people. So people don't realize that the tech industry is actually very creative. You have to know code, but you have to know how to use it. So I'm also a dive master, which is a professional scuba diver. So I'm part artist, part geek, and I know business.
Well, that's an awesome combination. The triple threat, the trifecta. And
the thing is like you don't realize it because it's one of those things where when I'm listening to people, it's like, you know what? That is what makes you unique. Like what people see as you being an outsider is what makes you different. And what makes you different is what makes you unique. And that's what use that as opposed to trying to change yourself, use who you are. So I've learned that more and more as I've been growing into myself that, this is what makes me different. And that's what my strongest assets are now.
Yeah, that's really neat. And it's very similar to how I approach things. There's always conventional wisdom that contradicts the innate wisdom and strategy that you follow that's right for you. So you'll have some people that say, well, you need to niche down and specialize. But then there's other cases where you should diversify because your strength is in being able to borrow from many different experiences and industries and see how things connect and to borrow solutions from one area and incorporate them into another area. And that's what's so interesting to me about your theater techniques that help entrepreneurs get unstuck. How does that work? How do you bring that in?
Yeah. So, well, it's funny because I went through a really difficult period in my life where there was numerous deaths, and I went through a really difficult divorce, and I had to reinvent myself. And I'm not in my 20s or anything, so it's like, what the heck am I going to do? And I was out of the workforce because my husband had a really crazy schedule, and so I was trying to like fit into his schedule, and so everything just kind of imploded. So I went back to school, like I said, because I had dropped out of college to like start my life in New York. So I went back to school. And of course, when you're older and go back to school, it's like, I love this. This is great. You don't have to go to school. It's, like you have a whole life experience. So going back and studying and like, that was really great. And then I went to get my master's in educational theater at NYU. And I thought, I'm going to be a teaching artist. And then I realized that teaching artists, whenever anybody who works in the education department, like you don't make any money. And plus I had to start over and I wasn't in my 20s. And so I was like, I need to do something else. I can use what I learned, but I need to use it in a different way. And then I realized, I woke up one morning because I always get my best ideas first thing in the morning. And I thought, hey, why don't I use it for adults in the workforce? And so what I realized in working a lot of times with entrepreneurs is that they're all over the place, or they get really caught up in their own fears because whenever you have your own business, you have to do things that makes you uncomfortable if you want to grow your business. And so they get so caught up in all their own crap and their own BS that it helps to create a character, and they can step outside of themselves to become that character. And so what I always tell them is, Beyonce, Ms. Bay, she has Sasha Fierce. So when she goes on stage, she becomes another character. And so people always think, oh, Beyonce could do anything. I'm like, no, she's a person who has fears. She's just learned how to overcome them. And so she has done what a lot of things that I teach people is you become a playwright, and I break it down of like, what are the values of a successful person in your field? And then we figure out what their schedule is and how do they think, feel, and behave. A lot of people aren't aware of what the thoughts, what they're telling themselves, and they're not aware of what their body is telling them, and they're not aware of how their thoughts and their feelings are affecting their behavior. And a lot of times I will say, because networking is a huge problem for a lot of people, or getting up, just standing in front of people. There's a lot of I'm not worthy, especially if you're starting your own business, or a lot of women have this issue of feeling like a fraud, or like, who am I? Or I don't have all the degrees that are needed. So it's like, okay, what do you have to tell yourself in order to go up to that person that you've put on a pedestal? So if you could step into that character, that successful person that we have broken down, you can step into that person and think like they would think. And there's been studies about if people stand in the Wonder Woman position before going on an interview, that they are feeling more confident and come across more confident, and because their body posture has changed. And it just and there's been studies where if you just smile, like the muscles in your face just automatically make you feel better. So people just aren't aware that all of this is combined together working on your outcome, and that you just need to, you can actually manipulate it until you fake it till you make it kind of thing, or fake it till you become it.
Sure. So let me make sure. Let me make sure I understand. So it's kind of like I've got a coffee mug here on my desk that says "Don't panic, call Jack Bauer" or something like that. So I could, if I've got some inadequacies or fears or something, I should imagine myself playing a role like a Jack Bauer type character. Maybe even say, well, what would Jack Bauer do in this business situation? And you're saying that by behaving the way we want to be, eventually our behavior and our mindset lines up to create the right state so that we can be successful. Is that right?
Yeah, because behavior comes from what you're telling yourself, your thoughts. And so if you tell yourself, okay, I have something to offer this person, and you're going to be very different in going up to the likelihood of going up to somebody and talking to somebody who, because we always put people on a certain pedestal, especially, it helps if you don't know who somebody is. And then you're like, oh, I don't know who they are. And you just start talking to them. And then you realize this has happened to me. Everything I say, like, I've been there. Like I would start talking to somebody. I'm like, hey, I recognize you. And then he's like the CEO of a really big corporation. I was like, oh crap. If I realized who he was, I never would have gone up to him. And the same thing with dating, So, but it's the same thing. Yeah. If you're religious, you probably would do the, what would Jesus do?
Mm-hmm.
Or I know, like some people, like if they like Oprah, like what would Oprah do in this situation?
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's like stepping into how do you need to think? And how can and you can just change it. That's the great thing is that you could switch it for the opposite. And instead of feeling, oh, I don't have anything to offer, you could just switch it. I have something to offer. What do I have to offer? And that's where you really need to break down, what makes me unique and work on and to build the confidence. What makes me unique? What do I really do? Who's my audience? Things like that will help you. It's a technical thing that will help you that when you talk to somebody, they can understand like what it is that you do and what it is that you want from that person and things like that. But yeah, it's the same type of thing.
Now, you've probably already answered this in several different ways, but I'm always curious because you're working with entrepreneurs and a lot of them are overwhelmed or they're stuck or they're trying to get traction and maybe they're new entrepreneurs or maybe they have several things going on. And you've already mentioned some of these issues, but what would you say is the most common problem that you see on a day-to-day basis helping the people that you help?
Well, this happens to everybody. It's what I call you probably heard of it, the bright, shiny object syndrome.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, even Starbucks had this where at one time they were getting into the music industry and it was like they were going everywhere because, they were like very popular. And then they realized, wait, we're not being successful as a music industry, But that's the main thing. And what it is you have so many options that you go after everything. And it really falls back on not having a real strong strategy. Because when you really are very clear of like what your ultimate goal is, and it could be a 5-year plan, a 3-year plan, 1-year plan, 6 month, you could break it down. But when you're really clear about what you want to achieve and what your strategy is, you can reverse engineer and really come up with how are you going to get there. And then everything that comes into play, you're like, well, does this fit into the goal that we have talked about? And if it doesn't, then you can put it on the side and maybe you'll get to that later. But if it doesn't fit into the values of the company, it doesn't fit into the bigger picture, then you know that you shouldn't be following after that.
I like that. And I'm a strategic person, and it sounds like you are as well. The way I try to approach things is if you've got the right strategy, it really empowers you to say no to a lot of things that look like opportunities, but they're really distractions in disguise.
Yeah, and that's a lot of it is, we live in a society, and I think it's changing now, where it was like, oh, I'm so busy. Look at me. I am so busy. I am important because I am busy. And it's like, well, it's not really busy. Doesn't really mean anything. It's just like anybody could be busy. It's really setting your priorities and making what's important to you and getting those things done. And so a lot of like time management issues, it's really sitting down, figuring out what's the priority, and then just making those like top 3 priorities the main issue. And then everything else, you either find somebody to do the work or you just, you don't do it or you save it for, a rainy day.
Sure.
Yeah.
I think you really hit the nail on the head with the observation that we are mistaking busyness for business. And the fact of the matter is we could be very busy doing all the wrong things and not be getting anywhere in our business, even though we're busier than ever.
You know what it reminds me? It reminds me of the dog who chases his tail in circles. He goes around because it's like, oh, I'm so busy. And it's like, but you're not being productive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, you, as a rebel business coach, how did you get that title? What does that involve?
Well, like I had said, like I had always been like a little different than everybody else because I'm a visionary and I'm also a go-getter. So, and I think differently than a lot of people. And so I always felt kind of like the outsider. And I like working with people who want to be stars in their industry. Like, I live in Manhattan, like, I like media and the entertainment. Like that's all of my people. And I wanted to work with the people who wanted to be stars, who wanted to be the disruptors, who wanted to think differently. I want to work with the Albert Einsteins of the world. And so I thought, those are the people that are really the rebels. And so I was like, you know what, that's who I am. And those are the people I want to work with. And at first I thought, oh, is it too strong? One of those things, oh, is it too strong of a language? And am I going to get anybody? And then it was like, you know what, the more I just stand firm with like, this is who I am. And this is the people I want to attract. I get people are like, I love it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, you're my people.
Yeah. That's cool. I'm speaking with Joy Passey. She is the Rebel Business Coach and founder of Joy Prosperity Coaching in New York City. And we're talking about how entrepreneurs can get affected with bright, shiny object syndrome. Then they get unclear and overwhelmed about the best way to grow their business. So, Joy, I'm wondering, we've talked about some of these concerns of entrepreneurs who kind of going in so many different directions. Strategy helps and some other things, but you've probably got a lot of tips and techniques that you've learned over the years to help give clients that focus and direction. So I'm curious, what's one thing someone could do right now if they find themselves suffering from that dog chasing its own tail syndrome? What's one thing they could do right now to begin to see some immediate improvement in this area?
Yeah, the first step I always talk to people is about the self-awareness because, unless you're aware of how you're feeling and functioning on a regular basis, there's nothing really else you can do. And so I would really keep a record of what are you telling yourself first thing in the morning? What are you telling yourself when you come up with an obstacle? Are you telling yourself, oh, I'll never do this? Or are you telling yourself, hey, I can find a solution? What are you telling yourself first thing, when you're going to bed at night? What I've started doing, and this is just like a real simple technical thing that people can do, as I started going on Pinterest and the last thing that when I'm falling asleep, this is what I'm remembering is I go on Pinterest and I look at all the positive quotes about, law of manifestation and, that the universe is connected to the supply of money, supply of the universe. And I've noticed like a real change. There's a calmness and just knowing that you can step into the flow. So a lot of it is just really being aware of what you're telling yourself, and when you do become aware, even things like when you are going to work, are you letting the guy who cuts you off on the street affecting you for the rest of the day? Or are you telling yourself like everything's going to work out? When you're feeling anxious, are you resorting back to all those gremlins, those negative thoughts, or like, oh, this never works out. I'm never going to get this. Oh, I always get bypassed for the promotion. Oh, I always, or do you look at it and switch? Well, how can I change this? How can I change the way that I'm thinking? And really also being aware of like, are you feeling like nervous about something and really just being in touch? And with that, it's just, meditation. I mean, there's been a lot of studies about how meditation just completely changes the brain waves, calms people down. And then people usually go, well, I don't have time to meditate. I am so busy. It's like, just close the door, close your eyes, do several deep breaths, not the shallow breaths, but the deep diaphragm breaths, just so you can calm your nerves, especially if somebody is really upsetting you. If somebody has triggered you, it's what's called trigger. So if they're upsetting you and you recognize, this is part of the emotional intelligence, that you recognize, oh, I'm really getting upset by this. So instead of reacting, you're being proactive and you are able to acknowledge that you're feeling upset and acknowledge that you either need to take a sip of water to calm yourself down. You need to do like a deep breath, or you need to just leave the room. And this is with any relationship, because whether it's business or life, it's all relationships. So, that's some tips.
Sure. So you have been certified by the Institute of Social and Emotional Intelligence, which is really cool. And I think that's something that's particularly lacking in the workplace, among other areas, is we're just lacking social and emotional intelligence. What would be the advantage to working with someone like you? But especially for entrepreneurs who tend to be independently minded, they tend to be self-directed, they tend to be highly have high self-efficacy. They're not generally looking for advice, and yet this is who you work with. What's the advantage to somebody like that to say, okay, I need help in this area. Here's a blind spot. How would working with someone like you really improve their chances of success as opposed to just going it alone?
Yeah, and I totally get this because I'm one of those people. It's like I could do it myself. But as I've matured and, gotten older and matured, I have realized that you can't do everything alone, that we are all interconnected and we all need people. And so that's part of the social aspect of it. It's not only regulating yourself, but regulating and noticing how you're affecting other people and noticing what they're saying to you, maybe because, most of our communication is through body language. It's not through the words that people say, because God knows there's enough people who say one thing and then action speaks louder than words.
Exactly. Yeah.
So, it's really, you have to communicate, whether you have vendors, we have clients, follow up. A huge problem is people don't follow up. And that's where I find a lot of clients are like, well, I sent one email and and I'm like, look, you have to just follow up, and how you do that in a way that there's a fine line, where, like, nobody wants to bother anybody because you don't want to be pushy, but you do want to follow up. So it's really like, well, how can you do that in a way that is you're looking to connect with somebody? And so that's one of the things I also find, like, even on social medias, I'll get all these messages and they're like, hey, how about like we talk to see how we can help each other. And then you get on the phone and all they do is talk about themselves and what they can offer you, like what they're trying to sell to you. And I'm like, how is this a two-way conversation? And it's like such a turnoff. Or people go to networking events and all they do is talk about themselves. And then as soon as they realize that you have, like, they, in their mind, they have nothing to offer, they're like gone. And thinking really like long term. It's not just a short term relationship, but long term, and to bring people in, because you never know who knows somebody, or maybe you can be a speaker at some place or something. Like, you just never know. I mean, the doorman knows a lot of people, the janitor knows a lot of people, assistants know everybody. So you have to be nice, be a good human being. Yeah.
Well, we are in a relationship economy, and I think every entrepreneur needs to understand that and needs to kind of get aligned with that idea. It's not about selling; it's about serving and building relationships. And I think it was Zig Ziglar that said that you can have anything in life you want if you help other people get what they want first.
Yeah. Have you heard of the term, you ask for advice, you get money, you ask for money, you get advice?
I haven't heard that.
Yeah.
I
So,
like it,
and, of course, the Woody Allen, 80% of success is showing up.
Showing up.
Yeah. So it's the small things.
What are you working on right now that's got you really excited?
Actually, I have a couple different things. Well, I do a lot of strategy days, because what we talked about, how strategy, once you know what your goal is, you can get very clear of how to get there in the most cost-effective way, so you're not spending a lot of ridiculous money. So I do a lot of strategy days for people. And then another project I'm working on, I love doing research because I'm kind of geeky. So I'm doing a research paper on how to attain and retain women in the New York City tech industry. Because, as you know, the tech industry still has issues about how to treat women. So I'll be doing,
and it's a male-dominated, mostly male-dominated industry, isn't it? For the most part. It's still, and all the science, and so I'm involved in, like, the science industry, the STEM industry, and so I get my geek on doing research. Cool, that's neat. Well, you've got a lot of great ideas and things that you bring to bear upon business and life. And how would our listeners be able to get in touch with you to find out more about your products and services?
Yeah, so it's easy. It's www.joyprosperitycoaching.com. And then the email is joy@joyprosperitycoaching.com.
Awesome. joyprosperitycoaching.com.
Yep.
Great. It's been wonderful chatting with you. Any final thoughts or words of wisdom you'd like to share with us?
I think just keeping in mind that people like to do business with people they like. So just, I think we live in a society now where people can go on the internet. This is when that like you've gotten to a certain age. You're like, I remember when. So now it's like I see how things have changed, and like people could just go on the internet and they can just say horrendous things to people that they would never say to their face. And so if you really think about the energy that you're putting out, do you want that energy coming back? So it's just, be a good person.
I love it. Words of wisdom from Joy Passey. She is the Rebel business coach and founder of Joy Prosperity Coaching in New York City. But you probably work with clients all over the place, right? Not just New York.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's so easy. That's a great part of tech, right? It's so easy to do Skype, phone. Yeah.
Great. Well, you can find out more about Joy by visiting her website, joyprosperitycoaching.com. Thank you so much for being on Business Innovators Radio today, Joy. I really appreciated speaking with you.
Yeah, it's been great. Thanks.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.